One, two, three. Good morning, Tucson, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Creative City Show here on 1030 The Voice. With me, your host, Zach Yenser. As every day, Monday through Friday, 10 to 12, we share the stories and strategies of the people and ideas shaping Tucson's future. And along the way, we envision, we debate, we discuss the issues and themes critical towards getting to that best possible future. And today, boy, do we have a show for you. I've been looking forward to this one. We have two guests on today's show. I'm going to let the suspense sit on the first hour, but let me tell you, in the 11 o'clock hour, looking forward to having Sally Gonzalez, LD3 legislative representative, here in studio. We'll talk about what she's up to up at the state capitol, even though I think they're in recess right now. But we're going to talk West Side, U of A, Tucson issues, and just talk to someone in elected office. But in the 10 o'clock hour, I am looking forward to the tables being turned. The Chris DeSimone of Wake Up Tucson is in the other seat today, and we're going to talk millennials and Tucson.
Yes, sir.
The whole 10 o'clock hour.
So nice to be here.
It's nice to have you here.
These studios, this is a beautiful studio you have here.
It's the, I'm gonna do my Chris DeSimone impression.
Please.
The palatial KVO Studios, as we like to say here. That's a common...
here I am gerbophobing, scrubbing my antibacterial wipe.
Oh, it's Chris in the other chair. Well, the story is, and we're going to get into the details on this, but I had a I'm in the paper moment last week where I and Liz Pocock from Startup Tucson...
Her picture was way hot in that.
So I emailed Henry, and I was like, do you want my profile picture? Do you want a picture of me? Because there was a picture of Tucson,
right,
and there was a picture of Liz, and there was no picture of me. So I must have a face for radio.
I think you're ruggedly handsome, and the Star blew it if they didn't put your picture in there. That's what I think.
I did my best. I offered.
Okay.
But so I was in the paper talking about millennials in Tucson, and Chris, on your Facebook page, said something like, after 10 years of reporting, researching, and studying Tucson, I'll say what I can say on the radio, right?
Yeah, 2 words.
No crap. And so we were texting back and forth, and Chris was like, Zach, we need to have you on the show at some point to talk about it.
Right.
And I said, crazy idea. Why don't you come on my show?
Sure. We
turn the tables, and you get in the seat.
I love it.
And we talk about it. And I love that you said, I love it. And yes, thank you. Honestly, this is of you. This is your 4th hour of radio again.
That's true. I never thought I'd do it again.
You can't stay away. So we're going to talk about it. And here's the fun part. I'm going to give away the secret. I think people think that you and I disagree.
Right.
Or see things differently. I think it's a stylistic difference. I think there's actually a lot of stuff that you and I agree on.
It's dangerous for you to admit that.
Well, maybe. Although I'm gonna go in the Wayback Machine.
Yes.
This is not a safe space, right, Chris? This is not okay. So
I haven't done safe spaces since about 1 year old.
Once upon a time, you gave a fellow radio personality a famously hard time by how many boards they used to sit on. And their response was, you got to be in the room and talking to people to get things done. So in a way,
right,
I might be personifying some of that. And that may be the stylistic
So what you're telling me is you're a mini Joe Higgins?
I don't know.
That's not a bad place to be.
You make that call.
I think you're a mini Joe Higgins.
Okay.
That's good. Joe and I, our style together was always... We always said with Doug Martin, right? I'm bad cop, right? Doug was always good cop, and Joe was floating around in the middle, depending on the day.
Okay.
And I think you're in that idea that, and you did it even with your statement on Facebook about this millennial story, right? You balanced it with you were like the tender, loving father. I really like that this is going on, but this, and I really like this, but this. And you're right, it's a stylistic thing. And after 10 years of seeing the way this town operates or doesn't operate, unlike you, I've probably lost my patience, right? Because you're still, there's different ways to working on this, and this is what people don't get. Some of the people who don't like that I walk around sometimes with a cricket bat and smash things a little bit is the idea that I'm not saying this is the only way to get things done. All right, it's a mix of everyone's style, but there has to be a common denominator of that. Well, we want change, and what are we going to do to get change? And I think that's been one of the biggest. Everyone thinks this has to be. You got to be like really nice, and whatever Chris does because he's calling people out somehow because it makes people feel uncomfortable. This is somehow, it's just I'm just being mean spirited to be mean spirited, and it's not. I'm calling people out for. Are you doing your? We always said, well, how do we evaluate leaders? Number one, do you live to serve or be served? Number one, are you truthful? Number two, and whatever you say you do, are you good at it? Give me those three. And I haven't even talked about party. Right. So anyway, I'm talking too much.
Well, I mean, you're the guest on this
show. I feel like I'm talking.
Chris, aren't you talked out? Yeah, I don't know.
Probably. So I should.
I think the tone that I struck, and we're going to get into the issues because I want to hear what's on your mind in terms of. First of all, and we'll get back to this in a second. First of all, that article, I just want to set it up here. That article spoke about attracting millennials. The really issue that research spoke to was retaining. Right. And you know this, our listeners know this. I've said it on the show last week when I talked about it, that the real issue that newspaper article was talking to is that we're still having a hard time retaining millennials. And I haven't been able to personally validate that 13% number. It's not the first time I've seen that. People smarter than me. But when you look at basic inflow and outflow, we lost about 1,400 millennials a year, minimum, between 2012 and 2017. In that same stretch, we gained 4,000 to 5,000 individuals 55 and plus.
Correct.
So regardless of what the exact number is or the exact percentage is, we've been losing more than we've been gaining, when other cities post-recession have been doing just fine, and we're becoming an older community way faster than we are maintaining as a younger community. And one of the things that I have been starting to say is that what Tucson is good at will get you here. What Tucson struggles to do will not keep you here. And even though you've had 10 years on this show, on the Wake Up Tucson show, of speaking to some of these issues, to me, these issues are about 100 years old at the absolute minimum.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm new to the game.
Well, and if you're new to the game, what does that make me, my friend? So what I'm saying is that, yes, my approach to this was, look, there's good things happening. We can't overlook that. But we can't, in your words, and maybe Ted Maxwell's words from last week, the toppings only make sense when there's ice cream in the cone.
Right.
So if people expected this conversation to be a knockout dragout, I don't know. Maybe it'll get there. Maybe they'll be disappointed, because I think we agree on that. Right. That we got to get the essence right before this other stuff.
One thing I want to mention here is I feel as though there's these kind of buzz phrases that we feel if we do well at, this is the key, the cornerstone of the entire community succeeding. All right. So I mean this. So millennials, it's this buzzword, right? If you have a kick-butt millennial thriving population, this is the cornerstone of a thriving society, right? I think the millennials that have fled are just part of many groups that have fled, right? I feel like we're concentrating too much on just the millennials that have fled. So when you say that influx of 55 plus people coming in, these are people who usually have their income is already assured, right? They're retired. They're that classic couple, 2 pensions. They're retired. They sold a house in California for $670,000 and bought a beautiful house here for $200,000. I feel like that's what's going on. I mean, the state job report, even Stellar did a piece in the Star about it maybe 2-3 years ago, talked about how many level people who were making, they called them basically executive general manager folks of that kind of occupation left Pima County, right? And it was like 1,600 people like that in a 1-year period, right? Well, that's hundreds of millions of dollars of spending power that also left Pima County, and I would tell you that's probably even more devastating currently than the 13 millennials are going to hurt you later more than ever. But I think the millennials are part of a group of people that have fled, because Joe and I have always said over the 10 years is that if you're looking to make money and build a career in Tucson, you got a hard road to go. Job here, right? Like TUSD superintendent or something. A lot of the times those people coming in for those jobs are either this is their last stop in their career, or they're just starting out, because that's what Tucson is offering for them. So again, I just feel like the millennials are part of a band of people that have fled Tucson. And one last thing, I'm talking too much, that Forbes article, right, that came out the same year as this millennial number, right, this 2012, 2017, where we still said we had a negative GDP as a community. Same thing. And when that went out, everyone thought it was crazy, and then our mutual friend Ted Maxwell sent out saying, look at the map dashboard for SALC, what we've done with Eller, it all plays out. So I'm sorry, I'm talking too much again.
That's okay. I had a listener ask, what was the the kind of the way that early on Wake Up Tucson was sort of talked about was in terms of like the conversation you might hear in the table next to you at Denny's. At least I had heard that it was kind
Correct.
of the tabletop conversation next to you.
We say we're the most unprofessional show in radio.
Would you still say that? I
Sure.
mean, is that still okay? Because I'm going way back in the Wayback Machine. But what was the if someone asked you, are you jaded? Are you grutzy for a reason? What happened and when was when
When
was
were you
that?
touched?
Yeah.
Grutzy, is that a millennial term? I've never heard grutzy before. Help me out.
I don't think so.
What does grutzy
I think
mean?
it's a term that precedes both you and my generation.
So I've heard this before.
Or maybe it's just a Midwest East Coast thing. I don't know.
The interesting thing about the jaded comment always comes from people who I've probably gored the ox the gore. You know, I've hurt their feelings because I've criticized either them or something that they think is great. That's usually what happens. And what I've always said in doing this show is we've tried to, it's like the tagline for the show, meet people who make Tucson great and a few who mess it up. And what I believe in this town is I believe, and you know this, right? There are so many cool small business owner entrepreneurs. And I am so blown away. You know, so when we do Food Fridays, right? We've been doing this food thing for almost 10 years, right? And what happens is, yes, I'm a foodie. I used to work as, in the culinary industry and all this stuff. I've done consulting for restaurants, but in the end, I'm in awe that these folks are surviving and then thriving in a very tough environment. And the reason I have them is not so we can eat food. I'm really trying to celebrate some of these small business owners that are in really tough spots. Crime is high in their area. The restaurant business is crazy. Look at Rocco at Rocco's Little Chicago. He's been doing it for 20 years. Break-ins, all this crazy stuff he puts up, but he's still doing it, and he still does it with a smile on his face. And that's and we all know people like that, whether it's a dry cleaner, a restaurant. Those are the people that I'm celebrating because I've seen them come through over and over again doing great things. So my thing is with the people who say I'm jaded criticizing the powers that be in this town, as we say in My Fair Lady, show me. What's the results? Because I don't see, I see some incremental improvements, but for everything that's happening downtown, the rest of the other parts of town are falling apart. So when you say you're a city council person, you're supposed to run the entire city. It's a citywide election with citywide responsibilities. Well, you know something? I'm happy as all get out that downtown's doing what downtown's doing, because 10 years later, it's pretty impressive, right? But, and then thanks to the state of Arizona taking over the Rio Nuevo board and filling it with, a couple of evil Republicans who are getting things done. So in relation to jaded, Zach, it's reality. That the people who say I'm jaded, you can say it, but you prove me that I'm wrong on the stuff I'm talking about. Because most of the time that doesn't happen. Or they don't want to have the conversation. Think about this, right? So even on your Facebook post about that, right? And you tied me in, and there was a few people. You had a string of stuff going, right? But then I noticed that when you posted this, that you and I were going to have this conversation about millennials, no one says a word. There's like 4 people that hit a like, good. Our mutual friend Taylor Davidson. But you could tell that some of these people who want to say, "Oh, I'm jaded," don't want to have a conversation either.
But some would say that you've closed the door to certain individuals that you won't have them on.
There's only one person who's not allowed. Well, there's 2. Sorry, everyone else is allowed on the show. 2 is not allowed on the show. One is Chuck Huckleberry, and there's a way he can come back on. So he has 3 votes that do anything he wants, pretty much, 99% of the time. So 2 of the 3 votes, whether it's Richard, Ramon, or Sharon, have to come on and do 2 segments of show with me. Once that happens, Chuck can come on anytime he wants. The other guy is Paul Cunningham, because he used to call in all the time, which was great. And then what happened was, during his re-election against Kelly Lawton 4 years ago, he decided he wasn't calling in during the election. Then when he won, he called up Higgins and said, "I want to come back on." I'm like, you dodged during re-election time so you wouldn't be caught maybe saying something stupid, and now you want to come back on. So anyone else, I don't know, who else have I closed the door to? What do you got for me?
Well, I mean, so I think, yes, you're right. There's 2 specifically that you just mentioned.
Sure.
But just, relaying what I, have a sense about your show is that there's some that feel welcomed on and some that don't. And
you mean the guy who's had Regina Romero on for 3 times this year? Steve Farley comes on all the time. Mayor Rothschild comes on all the time. You don't see them walking away going, "Chris was too mean to us." Come on. Everyone, I've told this to everyone, whether you think you're a friend or you're you want to challenge what I say. I always say, all you got to do is call or email us, and you get on the show. That hasn't changed. I don't chase candidates. If you want to come on, if you want to listen, you want to access the Wake Up Tucson listenership and have a conversation with me in front of them on the radio, all you do is have to call or email wakeuptucson@gmail.com, and we'll get you on the show. There's been no one else that we've said you can't come on the show. I just named 2. So if there's people who think because I don't come and kiss their butt at a meeting and go, "Oh, hey, buddy," that means I don't want them on the show, then that's their problem, not mine. That's their issue. It's not my issue. Any one of Zach's listeners right now who think I'm too mean and I won't let them on the show, just come on the show. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody. You want to have a conversation? Let's do it. I'm there. I mean, Regina Romero and I are the perfect example. Her and I we disagree on 93% of the topics. But when we started working together doing the best 23 miles and working on the signage for the best 23 miles, we have common stuff. She came to me because she wanted help in relation to South 12th and doing this DOSE concept that she wants to do down there. We did it. I sat down with her staff. We talked about it. You just have to ask. There's this perceived that Chris doesn't want to talk to you. Those people are just, for some reason, they're intimidated. And that's their issue.
So there you have it.
You and I have all these conversations all the time.
Yep.
Am I a mean, nasty guy?
No. You're a big teddy bear, Chris.
Bring it on. I'm ready. I'm ready to have the conversation.
I wanted to ask you one question
Sure.
before we go to break, and this
Sure.
will lead into some of our nuts and bolts nitty gritty,
Sure.
because I want to get your view and have a little bit of back and forth on again, it's not all about one generation, and I'm totally there with you.
Yep.
But the research that a generation is is still trying to figure out, can Tucson be a long-term place. This may be a segue. Well, I've had a lot of callers call in and will say there's all this focus on downtown. It's all about downtown, what happens to the rest of the community. And I always say that look, begrudgingly, the state is allowing Tucson to have one TIF district. So the city of Atlanta, which is a smaller city limit size than Tucson, has 7 of these things.
Sure.
And it's not like the whole city can be a TIF district. There's a specific area, and in a sense that it's not like the TIF is the whole city, and there's some parts of the city that are being ignored in that TIF. The TIF is a very specific, district.
Sure.
So I think if we're going to have that argument, we need to be talking about how we influence the state to allow more of them, or how we apply some of those same practices, public-private partnership, to other places of the city. So Rio Nuevo is not. They're spending a tenth of the money that's being spent in total. They leverage public dollars with private dollars,
right,
which is another thing that I have heard kind of misspoken about. So what would you say to that? Is it a little disingenuous in your mind to say that all the focus is on downtown when that's the only area of the city that has that economic driving component to it?
I feel like that's almost. I think the real point is that downtown is getting a lot of the attention because it's a win for the city. All right. No one wants to talk about 29th and Swan. That's a bummer, dude. I feel that. So remember, in addition to Rio Nuevo, right, which of course had the failed hiccups in the beginning, right? Plus you had 160 million plus put into a streetcar line for pure infrastructure. Okay? The chances of those two things happening again in the future for Tucson are very few and far between, unless the state legislature flips Democrat one day, which it will. All right? Because right now, the trust level of Tucson to spend money wisely at the state legislature, at least with the Republican Party, is very low. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. To let them do that again. And from my point of view, I still think the city can spend money more wisely on basics that could help some of these areas. Like I always say, if you want to, my starting point with this is that if you're going to you want more money from the taxpayers, what are you doing as the municipality out of what you're already getting to work smarter? And that's always been my take. That's been my take on roads with the county. Can you show that you could take some money out of a $1.3 billion budget and fix a road? Like, really try to fix a road. It's the same thing with all these TIFs. I had this discussion with Rothschild. I said, well, what do you want the legacy? And he goes, oh, he wants more TIFs. Well, you're not going to get more TIFs until the legislature becomes Democrat. And there's a Democrat governor to sign off on it. So that's not going to happen, I don't think, anytime soon. And remember, this is a region that constantly craps on the state legislature, verbally, publicly, written word. What do you think? They don't get it? They don't use this crazy thing called the interweb to find out that most of the leadership in Tucson craps on them. Oh yeah, let's do 6 more TIFs for you guys. Sounds good to me. So, but I believe that you're right. Right? There's been so much more money leveraged in the downtown than the other areas, and that's the way it worked. That's the way it was designed. I got it. But I'm just telling you, the idea that there'll be TIFs at any time in the short-term future to work on the other places, I don't see that. And then the other thing is that so remember, you got to pull the TIF from somewhere. So is the TIF coming from a citywide TIF? We're doing a specific area. I mean, they drove the Rio Nuevo lines on purpose, right? To take in shopping malls and car lots and things like that. So there's a few more that you could do like that, but there's only so much stuff you can squeeze out of the goose sack.
So this is going to take us to our second segment.
Sure.
Because I want to dig into what you feel like has been your research on what haven't we done well to make Tucson a place that retains, because we're talking millennials in Tucson, so let's just talk about the generation.
Sure.
And what has to be done in your mind to get back on track?
Gotcha.
That's where we're going to go the rest of the hour.
I'm there.
And see where it goes.
Let's roll it.
10:29 in the morning. Conversation flies when you're having fun. You're on 10:30 The Voice, trusted local news and talk with Chris DeSimone. The tables are flipped. He is in the guest seat. 790-2040 is your phone line opportunity to call in and talk to either one of us. So take advantage of that. We'll be right back. Tucson, welcome back to the show. We've got a packed show for you today. This is Zach Yenser. You are on the Creative City Show, talking about people and ideas shaping Tucson's future. And we are halfway through our hour with Chris DeSimone, the host of Wake Up Tucson. When we're done here at the top of the hour, Sally Gonzalez will be in the studio. She's the first Native American in Southern Arizona to represent Southern Arizona, specifically Legislative District 3 in the state Senate, and made history back in 1997 when she was elected the first Native woman in the state legislature as a representative, and has been serving on the Pascua Yaqui Tribal Council, and is a history maker in her own right, and will be in studio to talk about the legislature and her switch from the House to the Senate, what that's been like, and her priorities here in Tucson. Her district is a lot of the West Side, some of the U of A, and so it's also a personal interview because that's where I live. So I'm curious to
look at you demanding accountability from your representative.
Well, this is my first time. This will be my first time meeting her,
Okay.
and a listener actually set this conversation up for me. So that's the power of this. If you're listening, you have a connection, shoot them my way, and
Of course.
and we'll make the show
Happens
happen.
all the time.
So
Are we on video today?
we are on video
All right.
today.
So if you
KVOI.com, search the Watch tab. We are on video.
watch tab, so
The Watch tab. So Chris, I want to get into this with you, and not in that sense. I mean, there's not, we're not going to like fisticuffs here.
did you like
here.
my Wolverine Spider-Man picture I put up on Facebook yesterday?
I did.
I said you were Spidey.
I appreciate it.
More of the scientific, nicer guy. Where I'm the guy running around with claws popping out of his back of his hands.
You said it, not me.
Thank you very much.
So whether it's we're talking about millennials in Tucson as a reflection of some of the momentum I think we do have in some areas,
Sure.
and some of the areas where we have work to go. And I like to say is, how do we not in Tucson have this culture of the Lego movie theme song of everything is awesome when you're part of the team, right? How do we highlight what's going well and make sure that we're constantly pushing the things that need momentum?
Sure.
So in your view, what's the one thing that we're doing well? And then tell me the things that you think are creating an environment where millennials are still struggling. I mean, I help to lead an organization that focuses on this issue, so I've got my opinions. But
Sure.
you're in the guest seat today. What's on your mind?
Thank you. When we talk about doing well, okay, it's the fact that
it's taking you way too long, Chris.
There's truth to this, but what I'm really trying to do is prioritize what I think is one of the big ones that's doing well. I think there's lots of little things we're doing well. I feel like I'm a tourism guy, right? And so one of the things we are doing well as a community, and I got to give kudos, is Visit Tucson in relation to getting Tucson on the map again out there in international and national media has been huge. And our mutual friend Dan Gibson, I love what he's doing. Mary Rittman is one of the unsung heroes over there too. She does a lot of this just as much as Dan, but Dan likes to go on radio shows and talk, right? So I think what Visit Tucson on getting us out on the map there has been pretty amazing, and we have an amazing inventory of stuff that's great for travelers and tourists to visit, crawl through, hike through, all that. Now, on economic development stuff, what I see is, you always want to play to your strengths, right? So when you look at our location of I-19, linking us between an international border, being on one of the two big east-west interstates, this logistics thing has been important. So when I look at the home goods thing, I look at the Target fulfillment center, I see what Too Simple is trying to do out there. I got the offshore group out there. So I see that logistics thing. Oh, and of course what Alan's doing with Amazon, right? We are built as we are located beautifully for logistics. I know what the Maquilas are doing in relation to like MTD Group and these various people in relation to Maquilas in Nogales, and then having in that same area, they have their presence there where they're either shipping raw down or finished product up. So I love that synergy that's going on. It's just not as sexy as talking about 12, biochemists that opened up a biotech company. But I feel like that's something, talking about home goods having a logistics center is not too sexy, but I think it's pretty important, and it plays to our strengths. So that would be what a couple of things we're doing well. There was a guy, what's his name? You can remind. He brought up a term called, really, I love this term. It's called economic gardening.
That's a Tony Ford and Zach Yenser special there.
So in the end, it's all about the basics, dude. It's about the basics. We have this community has fallen down so bad on the basics that we have to be more than ever in the incentive game to get somebody to show up here. So the guy that I'm going to use, I've said it on the air many times, and I'll say it right here. He's the perfect guy to quote for this conversation. John Jacobs, Art Fire, Tony Ford partner, and he was on the show, and he was talking about how hard it is for him to get basically computer software people to come to work for him. These are $75,000 jobs a year, okay? And I said to him, I go, what's so tough about this? And he said that he can't find anyone from the U of A that wants to stay here, wink, wink, millennials, right? At the same time, or the people that are coming out of the U of A, for some reason they're not working for him. So then he's going out and trying to hire from outside of Tucson. And he said what's happening is it's starting to be like a broken record. I have the prospective employee come in with their spouse and their kids, right? And they love the job. They love what we're doing. Our workspace looks great. But then they spend a couple of days here. And they come back and they go, ugh, this place doesn't look too good. We try to go to a park with the kids that were like, look like crap, a lot of homeless guys bouncing around. And public school districts kind of stink. And I'm trying to find a job for my spouse someplace around here. That's really tough. So right there is a lot in that one story from John Jacobs. The economic gardening story comes alive for him, or as part of his nightmare of trying to hire good people to take a $70,000 job. So we have local government that does not care about the curb appeal of Tucson and why that's important, right? Quality of life. This is basic, Zach. It is. Everyone always going to talk about the roads again. The roads are so important. The parks are so important. Having a school district like TUSD fester for the last 20 years is not good for this community, right? Having the police at 1988 staffing levels at the city of Tucson is not good for anybody.
So let me jump in there and ask this question. It's kind of a two-layered question,
sure.
and I think this is an issue that I think that you can speak to really strongly. So when I sit down with the county, for example,
right.
They will say that we have just finished a pendulum swing of building new roads, of building out, and that maybe not new roads, but expanding current roads. So there's this pendulum swing in the community, and not just any community, I think it's most across the country, where there's this building out new infrastructure to where, we bond this stuff out, we put HERF money towards it, and then when it comes to maintaining our infrastructure, well, then we have to figure out massive amounts of money to swing back and take care of what we had for the last 10, 15, 20 years, which I think was some of the logic behind the proposition that failed last year to raise, what was it, at least half of what we were behind on roads. It was, remind me of the amount that failed in the county.
I don't know if it was, county's about like 800 to 900 million in the county. So I don't think it was even going to get there.
No. But that was something that as I'm aware that you were that you were opposed to.
Absolutely.
And while when I talk to the county, they say we can add more and more and more and more back into taking care of roads as that HERF delta changes, as we cut staff. It's not going to incrementally be enough. Now, I agree it should be from the general fund. I guess what my challenge is I agree philosophically that we have to have general fund monies going towards roads. I just wondered on the 2018 pragmatic side of it, what was your opposition to, if you were, maybe I'm mistaken, opposition
No, I
to
was way there against 463.
Do you know what I'm trying to say?
So let me ask
and
you.
I have a second question on this.
I'm going to ask you a question back.
Okay.
We'll do dueling questioners here.
Okay.
How long has Chuck Huckleberry worked for the county?
So what, 25 years at this point?
40.
40.
Now, he's been the county administrator for over 20. What was Chuck Huckleberry's job before he became, what was his main job in the county? Do you know before he became county administrator?
I don't know that.
Director of Transportation. So if there's someone who's in control of the kitty of $1.1 billion plus, who somehow, he forgot that you're supposed to put money for road maintenance for 25 years? The guy who shouldn't have forgotten was Chuck Huckleberry. That's his thing. He's a transportation guy. So when you say, "Oh, we're building," well, didn't we have RTA to build out new? That was part of the RTA, right? Was to build new capacity on all these different roads and do it in the right way. And so what happens is, so HERF dollars, when they kept on, I've said this a million times on the show, right? So even when they were getting swept, right? That was the thing they sold on everyone's radio show and TV. Oh, they're swept. Oh, so we were getting 70 million instead of 90 million, right? We'll take the 70 million and put it towards the road. So Marana uses all of their HERF money towards a road. The actual payroll and people to do it comes out of general. Why is this a hard thing, right? So think about it.
But I mean, the Department of Transportation is funded by HERF.
And it shouldn't be. The transportation should be general fund, and you use the HERF money to fix a road. All right? So let's say this, right? If you put $75 million a year into actual roads, curb to curb, right? And so remember, Chuck would have to find that out of a $1.4 billion budget, okay? He's going to get $105 billion from the evil state this year, okay, from HERF and VLT. And he can't put $75 million towards a road. He's going to put, 15 this year, whatever he's talking about? And he thinks this is a big freaking sacrifice. So what's $75 million? Let's say he had to find $75 million out of the, let's say the state wasn't going to give you 105, Zach. All right, out of a $1.4 billion budget, what's the percentage of your budget that's $75 million? It's 5%. So if one of your basics that you're supposed to take care of as a county is roads, what they're telling you, these county folks, when they come on your show, we can't find 5% of the budget to maintain roads. Unacceptable answer. That's why I was against 463, because they don't do the right thing with the lot of money they get now. Why would I give people who have shown that they're foolish with our money more money? That's why I was against 463, and I'm glad it went down hard.
So it's interesting, and I just want to keep do we still have someone on the line? Let's get to someone on the line. We have
Sure.
Charles on our live line. Charles, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
I think we have a tremendous opportunity to lead the nation from Tucson as far as roads are concerned. You might be familiar with the Ansari X Prize. Its progenitor was called the Ortega Prize. That's the one that Lindbergh won flying solo across the Atlantic. And if we would put up a prize, we could call it the Saguaro Prize or name it after somebody, the McCusker Prize, whatever you want to call it, whoever donates the money. And you know who'd be perfect to hit for this is Caterpillar for the donation. We could call it the Caterpillar Prize for the most innovative solution to inexpensively fix a road. And if you made it incredibly inexpensive to somehow, through some high-tech process, to fix roads, the county would no longer, and the city would no longer have the excuse of the HERF funds were swept, because it wouldn't cost much money to do it. Furthermore, if you had some public interest firm that was able to do this on a quick basis and install I don't know, a quarter mile of a road fixed virtually overnight or at least over a week. Imagine what Tucson could look like.
All right.
Charles, thanks for your call. Any thoughts on that, Chris?
Again, anything that's going to push innovation, whether it's a cash prize or whatever, I'm there. You know, we have a lot of smart people at the U of A. I'd love to offer up a prize of something for somebody to figure out how we can fix a road cheaper and quicker. I'm always there for that. But in the end, it's about priorities, Zach. That's where we're at.
So on that note, it's interesting, and this is kind of what I've been trying to message out, and I want to get your thoughts on this, and then we'll get to the challenges and solution part in the final segment. Is
Sure.
What's our barriers to getting here? Is when I look across the country and see what is retaining millennials, it's not what cities often sell to them. So cities will often say, "Hey, we've got this great culture and amenities. Come to here." When you
Right.
ask a millennial, what do they really want out of cities? It's jobs, it's affordability, and it's infrastructure. And to me, those are basics. Those are basics to me. That includes quality of life issues, parks. That includes roads. Obviously, it's things like that. And so I often feel like, personally in Tucson, there was an article that came out. And by the way, I'm bought into the idea that tourism creates economic opportunity. I've had those guys on my show that often those who move here eventually have been tourists at one point in time.
Correct.
So I'm bought into that.
Yep.
But this idea that we keep celebrating that Tucson is for the burrito fueled cyclist that tromps down a mountain at sunset, and that's who Tucson is for. I think these messages to me take away from what I think that we should be communicating. We do have, and not everyone's a fan, but we do have an industry, a mining innovation industry. We have aerospace and space exploration and space tech. We have a burgeoning entrepreneurship ecosystem. I just don't think that we brand and sell the things that would be the ice cream in the sundae.
Correct.
Do we disagree on that?
I think we're pretty much there. I remember going through the first recent rebranding with Visit Tucson with a company out of Kansas City called MMGY, and they had a quote by Anthony Bourdain, and he said, "Every city, when I say, hey, tell me about your city, they all say the same thing. We have an amazing arts community, art and music. We have our culinary scene is unbelievable, right? And he says, and we're blank one public works project away from being a world-class city." He goes, I hear that from every city humanly possible,
Right.
and I see us getting into that again. And that's all the sundae. That's all the sauces on the sundae. That's what we're selling, and I think that's back to where we're at. We're not concentrating on the basics because the arts and the burrito chomping mountain cyclist way more sexier to talk about than growing grass on a field or fixing a pothole or fixing TUSD or those kind of things.
So if you had to list 4 or 5 things, and you probably have throughout the interview,
Sure.
but for Tucson specifically, what are the things that if we get them right, and we'll finish out talking about how to get there
Right.
in the few minutes we have left, and at the next segment, what are those things? What's on DeSimone's list? You said no crap. We're not retaining millennials. Why?
Well, back to I think in the end, the factors are back to economic gardening. Those things that you said that millennials really crave, we fail on. All right? But if you want to go fix the place, right, I've always said this, if you want to really minimize, I got 2 things for you, right? Pima County needs to change leadership, and TUSD needs to actually be an effective school district. Those are 2 amazing steps to get this place back and going again.
So are you feeling optimistic about the city then? You didn't mention the city.
Because the city, there's no chance of changing them. All right? It's a 7-0 vote. They're not changing the hive mind over there anytime soon. But even people in leadership in the city will tell you that the way the county is run is not beneficial to the city. They won't say it in an interview, but many people on the city council have told me privately that if Pima County ever changed and Chuck Huckleberry goes away, it'd be beneficial for the city to thrive. So, but what I do want to get back to, when we don't have to talk about now. You got a break? You want to go?
Yeah, let's go to a break.
I want to talk about, if I can, I'm going to take over your show for a minute and a half. The people of your generation,
Yep.
what they're not doing
Okay.
to make things better here.
Let's do it.
Is what I want to do.
Perfect.
Thanks, Zach.
Let's go to break. When we come back, we'll at least start there, maybe end there. Tucson, don't go away. 1030 The Voice, trusted local news and talk. Tucson, welcome back to the program. A quickly fast-paced hour. Wrapping up with DeSimone in the guest seat today. And we've got a couple of things we want to hit on before we end. What are millennials not doing that we should be doing to make this place a community where we can thrive? I've got 30 seconds for our caller Mark on the live line. Mark, go ahead, the quick version for us.
Yes, you mentioned that millennials want to have, what was it? You said it in order. Good jobs. The middle one was, what was it?
Good jobs, infrastructure, and affordable.
Yeah. Affordable was your middle one.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would have affordability if we had low taxes, good regional infrastructure, and of course the jobs will come along with that. And when people have jobs, then affordability occurs.
Yep.
So it's all right there. And we cannot have, and Chris is absolutely correct, we cannot have that environment with the political situation we have now in the county and the city.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate your call.
Thanks, Mark.
So Chris, I agree with a lot of what Mark said. Our taxes could be lower, but Pima County is kind of in the middle as it is. We're not the lowest or the highest in the state by far, but we've got three and a half minutes. So,
and I'm definitely willing to come back and do it again.
Super.
So
wonderful.
Here's the thing. When I look at your Facebook exchanges with your crew, okay, I see the same mistakes going on that the previous crew made. Okay, we're going to talk it out. We're going to talk about ecosystems and all this. It's cute. I love it. I got a big tear. We're going to, what happened was 10 years ago when the economy hit the fan, we had regional town halls. We're going to talk it out. Blue ribbon panels. Trio spent lots of money on the blueprint, the economic blueprint, and all this stuff, right? And we all ignore that stuff. What I need your generation to do, if they really want to fight for Tucson, is you're going to have to tell the older generation in some of these positions of business leadership, we're not doing it the same way anymore. Because the same way there is that a lot of them have learned that either for their own personal businesses or their egos, they like kissing the asses of the people in elected positions, no matter how bad they do. So I'll keep him nameless, but someone who's totally in your, I told you who he was before we started, okay? He works for a utility. He's a young guy. He does government relations, right? And here's a guy who's stroking a check to Sharon Bronson when she ran. Why would anyone who has a brain on their shoulders, who's in their late 20s, say, give me more of Sharon Bronson? If you really thought about it, 24 years in office and everything has fallen apart on her watch. So young millennials who are listening to this show or anywhere older than that, you are making the same mistake that all these other folks did in Tucson, Arizona, that you should be forsaking their leadership in some of this stuff. If you really want to fight for this, I need you. I don't care what party you are, but if you don't change the seats of leadership at the county and TUSD right now, you are doomed to go into the same hole as the people who are running utilities and these other businesses that have sent you this way. And they're still in positions of leadership. If you don't rebel, and you don't actually fight for this town, enjoy this economic melees for another 20 years.
And that's the final word from DeSimone on the show. On that note, I'm encouraged by those who are choosing to stay in Tucson. This may be the next step.
They got to fight for it.
Is to understand how local jurisdiction works and to be a part of it. Chris, thanks for coming on. Cover the basics. We don't cover the basics. Young people need to step in and support.
Don't make the
leadership.
mistakes of the past.
And that's DeSimone's no crap reason why millennials are still not being retained in Tucson. Thank you, sir, for coming on the show.
Thank you, Zach. Thanks for letting me invade today. We'll do it again.
We'll be right back. Hour 2 of the show. Don't go away.